If you look at the timeline of British hospitality over the last 40 years, the survival rate for a chain restaurant is abysmal. Trends change, rent prices skyrocket, and the public gets bored. By all logical standards, a business based on serving wet meat and boiled vegetables in a mock Tudor building should have died long ago. But somehow, Toby Carvery is still going strong. It's a chain that operates in buildings that look like they were designed by a confused American tourist trying to draw a British pub from memory. It's a business that hasn't significantly altered its core product since the Cold War, yet somehow it continually outperforms the market. So how does a restaurant that serves what is essentially industrialized school dinner food survive a cost of living crisis, a massive shift toward healthy eating, and a 30% spike in beef prices? To understand the genius of Toby Carvery, we first have to look at the cultural landscape of the UK in the late 1970s and early 80s. In Britain, the Sunday roast was a mandatory social occasion. It was the anchor of the week. However, there was a massive logistical problem. Cooking a proper roast dinner is a nightmare. Between the preparation, the timing of 4 different vegetables, the meat, the gravy, and the mountain of washing up that follows, a roast dinner is 4 hours of unpaid labor. As the workforce changed and dual-income households became the standard, the time available for this culinary ritual evaporated. The demand for the roast remained sky-high, but the willingness to cook it was plummeting. This created a massive gap in the market. Enter the concept of the carvery. The idea had existed in hotels for decades, but it was Toby that popularized it. They offered a way for families to participate in the national ritual without the argument over who has to scrub the roasting tin. They realized that if you centralized the cooking process and removed the table service element for the main course, you could drastically reduce labor costs while increasing customer turnover. The roast dinner was just a vehicle for selling convenience wrapped in nostalgia. This industrialized nostalgia worked because it tapped into a very specific British desire for excess. People tend to view themselves as reserved, but when it comes to a buffet, that reserve disintegrates. The original branding, which evolved from Mr. T's carving room into the Toby Carvery we know today, leaned heavily into a cozy innkeeper aesthetic, as if it's your friendly local boozer or your nan's living room. And this feeling of familiarity is partly how they managed to weather so many storms over the years. If you look at the YouGov popularity data, Toby Carvery ranks as the 8th most popular dining brand in the UK with a 96% fame rating. They operate what is essentially a biological fueling station. The food is cooked in bulk, largely unattended, in massive combi ovens. This creates an economy of scale that's almost impossible for an independent pub to match. When you cook 20 turkeys at once, the energy cost per turkey drops through the floor. But the real magic trick is the deck, the counter where you line up to get your food. This deck is designed with a very specific psychological architecture. You line up, often for a significant amount of time, which builds anticipation. When you finally reach the chef, you're presented with the meat. This is the only part of the meal that's strictly portion controlled. Once you get past the meat, you're released into the vegetable section. Here's where the business model shines. Potatoes, carrots, peas, and stuffing are incredibly cheap. By allowing the customer to pile their plate high with these high-volume, low-cost fillers, Toby Carvery creates a sense of immense value. The customer looks at a mountain of food and thinks they've beaten the system. They think they're getting away with robbery. In reality, they filled up on carbohydrates that cost the restaurant pennies, while the expensive protein remained strictly rationed. This pile-it-high mentality insulates the brand during economic downturns. When money is tight, people don't stop eating out entirely, they just become more calculated about it. They stop going to places where they might leave hungry. Toby Carvery occupies a specific recession-proof niche. You might not have the best meal of your life, but you will definitely be full. For a long time, the biggest threat to Toby Carvery was its own reputation. It was seen as the culinary equivalent of a beige cardigan. The gastropub revolution was in full swing, where pubs were stripping out the carpets, installing exposed light bulbs, and serving sourdough with smashed avocado. In this new world of foodie pretension, Toby Carvery looked like a dinosaur. But while trendy chains were alienating working-class customers with high prices and small portions, Toby Carvery leaned into its uncool status. They understood that their core demographic didn't care about Michelin stars. Toby Carvery looked at the modern world, decided they didn't like it, and stayed exactly where they were. The last few years, however, have tested this model to its breaking point. 2024 and 2025 were a nightmare for the hospitality industry. The cost of beef alone rose by nearly 30%. Energy costs, which are vital for a business that keeps ovens running 12 hours a day, remained stubbornly high. The national living wage increased, driving up the cost of the armies of staff needed to clear the tables. If your main selling point is value, you cannot simply pass all those costs onto the consumer. If a Toby Carvery roast becomes as expensive as a gastropub roast, the illusion shatters. Instead of radically changing the menu or shrinking portions to the point of absurdity, they focused on aggressive efficiency and refurbishment. They realized that the Naff reputation was fine, but dirty or decrepit was not. There's a fine line between nostalgic and rundown. By investing millions into refreshing the estate, they managed to increase the volume of customers. There's a concept in business often referred to as the Cockroach Theory. A cockroach business is one that's not glamorous, not particularly beloved, but is built to survive a nuclear winter. Toby Carvery is the cockroach of the British food scene. They've navigated legal and public relations disasters that would sink a smaller boat. Take the incident in 2025 where a Toby Carvery franchise cut down an ancient oak tree, sparking a legal battle with the local council. It was a PR nightmare. Locals were furious. The Guardian ran headlines about it. In a fragile business, this kind of bad press translates to lost sales. But for Toby Carvery, it barely registered on the bottom line. The drive to get a cheap roast overrides the moral outrage. That's why last year they made enough profit to cut their corporate debt by £146 million. This financial health allows them to buy up freehold properties, meaning they own the land their restaurants sit on. So, where does this leave us? We're looking at a business landscape where the middle class is being squeezed, dining out is becoming a luxury, and the cost of raw ingredients is volatile. Logic dictates that the Carvery should be a relic of the past. Yet, the data suggests it isn't going anywhere. The brilliance of Toby Carvery is that it stopped trying to be cool 40 years ago. By refusing to chase the trends of the 90s, the 2000s, and the 2020s, it has outlasted all of them. It's positioned itself as a timeless, unchangeable pillar of British life. But what do you reckon? Is Toby Carvery a genuine national treasure that beats the hassle of cooking at home, or is it just a nostalgia trap that's past its sell-by date? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. Let's get a proper debate going. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the gravy-soaked world of British hospitality, give us a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell so you don't miss out on the next video. Cheers for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.